Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. I'm Shelby Monier, Vice President of Patient Programs and Education here at Zero, the End of Prostate Cancer. I'm so glad you could join us today for this very special Zero Live. With many new therapies being explored in clinical trials and approved by the FDA for the treatment of prostate cancer, one of the big time questions that we get a lot here at Zero is, well, what does the future of prostate cancer treatment look like? What is coming next? What's really exciting? Maybe what are we going to hear about at ASCO in the next couple of weeks? What's coming? And to help answer this question and to teach us more about precision medicine and what these really exciting advances mean for patients, and also to talk to us about a really exciting clinical trial called the SPLASH clinical trial, I am really excited to introduce Dr. Carrie Schaefer. Dr. Schaefer is an assistant professor of medicine in the Division of Hematology Oncology at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. So thank you for being here, Dr. Schaefer. We appreciate you carving this time out of your busy day.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're thrilled that you could join us. So let's just jump right in. We hear this new term, I would say, in the last handful of months called radioligand therapy. It's hard to say, it's confusing, it's not intuitive, but if you wouldn't mind just spending a few moments explaining what the heck radioligand therapy is, how it works, and why it's so exciting and a good option for prostate cancer patients, that would be amazing.
Sure. So radioligand therapy is a new and very promising approach to treating cancer. It works by delivering a therapeutic dose of radiation directly to specific targets on cancer cells. So in the case of prostate cancer, the target of interest is called PSMA, and PSMA stands for prostate-specific membrane antigen. This is a protein that's very highly expressed on most cancer cells in prostate cancer. So for the therapy, a radioactive particle is linked to a molecule that binds to the PSMA protein, and therefore the radioactive particle is delivered directly to the cancer cells. And this can avoid radiation to other cells that are not expressing PSMA.
So let's jump one step back to the radioactive material. Is this something that patients should be concerned about as far as, how much is too much radiation for one to receive? We do get that question a lot.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as these therapies are developing, they do have to do safety evaluation early on. And then throughout the later phase clinical trials, they're also looking for safety profiles as well. And so they ultimately select doses of these therapies that allow radiation to be given to the cancer cells, but also avoid radiation exposure to healthy organs. So they are as they develop, they are already thinking about that radiation exposure.
Great. So what should they expect when they're considering this type of therapy or when they agree to move forward with radioligand therapy?
So for PSMA targeted radioligand therapies in prostate cancer, for now, the first step is really getting a scan to check and confirm that PSMA uptake is adequate in their specific tumor distribution. And so the vast majority of patients with metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer, and that equates to people that have had earlier treatment for advanced cancer, the vast majority will qualify for therapy, but that scan is done really to ensure that their tumor does have uptake, because there are some exceptions. Okay. Once they're approved for the therapy, they typically get baseline labs and a checkup. Often we'll meet with the nuclear medicine team, who are the physicians who are administering the drugs. And then when they get the therapy, it's given via an IV. Often the administration time is pretty short, less than 30 minutes. And patients will probably notice that there might be an isolated toilet because of the radiation in the therapy. This is a type of therapy that is excreted in the urine, so they will see that there's an isolated place for voiding with urine so that there's not any radiation contamination elsewhere.
Okay. So there, like I mentioned, we talked a little bit about the SPLASH trial as we were saying hello just a few moments ago. But could you describe really just the design of the SPLASH trial, what types of locations the SPLASH trial is available in, how many patients are the investigators hoping to enroll?
Absolutely. So the SPLASH trial is looking at the use of lutetium-177, and the therapeutic agent is PNT2002. But the patients they're looking at are patients with metastatic prostate cancer following one novel hormonal therapy. So most patients are going to have an oral medication for their advanced prostate cancer. Now, this trial is looking at it prior to chemotherapy. And so it's randomized. 2/3 of patients will be enrolled on the lutetium arm, and 1/3 will be on the standard of care arm, which in this trial is going to be an additional novel hormonal therapy regimen. So the total trial accrual should be about 390 patients. There's a lot of sites across the US, there's sites in Canada, there's sites in Europe. So it is a trial that's really accessible to patients. And then if patients are randomized to the lutetium arm, they're going to get therapy every 8 weeks for 4 cycles. Patients on the standard of care arm will be seen at an equivalent regimen and routine medical visits that they would otherwise. And one nice thing about this trial is that there is, for patients that are on the control arm, the opportunity to consider crossover after disease progression. So I anticipate on this trial, a lot of patients that enroll will be able to get lutetium-177 therapy, either upfront or after progression on standard of care.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the crossover arm and what that means for a patient and how they're faring throughout the clinical trial and what's being looked at. So first, let's talk about just arms of trials. And then what makes it so exciting or important to have that crossover arm?
Okay, so if you do enroll in a clinical trial, an arm means that you're assigned to one treatment or another. So an arm with lutetium, you're on the investigational agent. If you're on the control arm, you're getting a standard approved therapy for advanced prostate cancer, but not right away, not getting the lutetium. So the reason that the crossover ability in this trial is really appealing is a lot of patients are eager and excited about lutetium therapies because it is pretty infrequent visits and very good toxicity profile, and really looks like a promising therapy for prostate cancer. So the crossover arm here is appealing because patients that are not assigned upfront to the lutetium arm do get that opportunity at the end of the trial to cross over and still receive the therapy. So having a crossover ability helps with accrual. Patients are more willing and eager to do the trial. And then for the healthcare field, it's actually very important information too, because at the end of the trial, we'll be able to see if patients that get it up front as opposed to later actually do better. And that if they do better, that'll be compelling data that the early use of lutetium is really beneficial to patients.
Yeah, that's really exciting that there's such a perk or a benefit, something really important for both the patient side and the provider side and the care team. That's great.
Absolutely.
But I love that you brought up, you mentioned it a few times in the answer to that question, and that's the standard of care for one of the arms. And we get that question a lot as well when people diagnosed with prostate cancer are trying to understand their treatment options and considering clinical trials. One of the first questions that we hear regularly is, I'm not interested because I don't want a placebo and I don't want a sugar pill. So I think that's true with many oncology trials or cancer trials, but just wanted to mention that. And if you have any additional thoughts on that, please jump in. It's just something that we hear a lot when we're working with the patient community.
Yeah, I think that's very understandably something that patients do express often. I don't want placebo. And for many cancer trials now, the control arm is usually some other acceptable form of cancer treatment. Only in the very late stages of cancer, where unfortunately sometimes there are no formal treatment options, that's when you may get a placebo if there's really no other opportunities. But it's always a good thing to ask about. And it is important that if you're interested in the SPLASH trial, and for the oncologist thinking about enrolling on it, you do need to be willing and medically able to get that standard of care because, for some patients, they do very well with that standard of care. Other times the toxicities are not a good fit for the patient. And so in that case, it's not a good trial for you. But
yeah, very good points. So in general, talk to us a little bit about just the excitement overall about radioligand therapy for prostate cancer. And if you could shed a little, if you had the crystal ball, the magic crystal ball, what's your outlook?
So I think radioligand therapy, there's a tremendous amount of excitement, both within the medical side of things and in the patient side of things, for a number of reasons. There has been a lot of recognition about the toxicity profile of this class of therapies. It has really low toxicity compared to some of the other drugs in our treatment regimen. So, it's a little bit less toxic than chemo and some of the hormonal therapies too. The main toxicities that we do worry about and need to look out for are kidney toxicity and salivary gland toxicity. There's actually some PSMA uptake in the salivary glands, so patients can get dry mouth or decreased taste. But those are things that we're really watching out for and looking out for, as patients are getting the therapies. And then the other excitement about it is that it's really a form of precision therapy that we see on imaging, the uptake of the PSMA, and we know that it's, predominantly in the cancer, and that's exactly where the drug is being delivered to. So it's very targeted.
Right. We recently partnered with Point Biopharma on a one pager, and I think on there we were kind of, as we were writing it, kind of said, if you can see it, we can get it. So we really liked that little saying.
And what's also great about PSMA scans and PSMA therapies is we are recognizing sites of disease which are smaller than previously identified, and it's very is able to detect very small areas of disease that we previously didn't see on CT and bone scan. So
wonderful. And it's very exciting about the adverse events or the side effects. But let's just talk a moment about reporting side effects in general to your providers when you experience those, and how important that is. And usually, if I'm not mistaken, we can often manage those side effects when they're reported regularly. So really important to report those side effects.
Absolutely. I think early reporting of side effects is helpful. And the other thing with side effects that we'll be watching for is with your lab work. Sometimes people don't realize they have low blood counts or decrease in their kidney function. That's not something a patient necessarily would be aware of, but we can detect those with routine lab work during treatment too. But I agree, on a clinical trial or not, it's really important to communicate. Mm-hmm. If you notice some changes while you're getting therapies, talk with your team, let them know, and they can help guide if you need to come in for a checkup or if you can follow up in a week, and just keep an eye on it.
Wonderful. Well, we talked a lot about the SPLASH trial, about radioligand therapy, so thank you for that. The Zero team is putting a couple of links in the Facebook chat. Any other information, Dr. Schaefer, that you would like to provide about where patients can get more information?
Yeah, so I think it's being shared in the chat, as you said, but the SPLASH clinical trial has created a website that is very patient-centric, and it basically provides a tool to patients to help them see if they're eligible for this clinical trial. And what's nice about that is if you enter information into the website, a member of the team from the site can reach out to you and help you identify if you may be eligible for the trial. And in addition to that, help you identify where geographically you could get seen. So there are a number of sites across the country, in Europe and in Canada, but it may not be in your hometown, but it's, it might be somewhere you could travel to, especially since visits are not that frequent. And then I do think for other radioligand therapies too, Pluvicto is now approved, and they also have patient support online that you can look out for if you're following chemotherapy and a novel hormonal therapy. That's an online resource for patients as well. So I really appreciate that companies are starting to do forward-facing patient-centric tools online, because I know that patients use a lot of online resources to get their care. And so I think it's fantastic that the companies are developing those support tools.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. And this particular website is very, very patient friendly and uses a lot of easy to understand language and breaks the information down for you to understand and digest really nicely. Well, Dr. Schaefer, we appreciate you and your time and your expertise. So thank you again for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who listened in on today's Zero Live. As always, you can find a recording of this particular Zero Live both on our Facebook page. We'll also put it on our website. And for any additional information on advances in prostate cancer treatment, you can find that on our website, zerocancer.org. Future Zero Live presentations will be present on social media platforms, so be sure to keep an eye out there. And I want to thank all of our participants and again, Dr. Schaefer, for your time, and have an enjoyable rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.